been 5 years since we started these challenges together. Time for our 10th 3D community challenge, Chasm's Call.
It's that time of the year again, render challenge time. I love a good render challenge. Nothing like questioning every life decision you ever made while tweaking shaders at 3 a.m. This time the challenge is called Chasm's Call. Sounds dramatic. Basically, I've got to animate a character standing on a shelf looking down into a deep chasm. Easy. I'm going to start by chucking cliffs into the background, writing a quick Vex script that lets me drive the orientation by moving a single center point around because my impulsive instincts took over and decided that was probably the best place to start. Thanks, brain. And I've got some old space rings lying around, so let's toss that in there too while we're at it. Why not? And what if, hear me out, the lights on this reactor turned on sequentially, as if we were staring down a long hallway. Probably overkill, but fuck it, we're doing it live. So I animated a cylinder with step keys overlapping the SciFi ring geo to drive an attribute on the geometry that would in turn drive the shader's emission. And next, I nested a bunch of spaceship thruster models together and shoved them at the bottom of the chasm to create some kind of reactor thingy. And it's not really sci-fi unless you've got a ton of random dangling cables. Pretty sure it's like a law of the jar or something. So again, why not spend way too much time writing another script that'll procedurally create some radial cable setup with a bunch of twisted secondary wires and shove that all the way at the bottom of the chasm where no one can see it. Time well spent, no regrets. To make this thing feel a little more aged, I'll grab the upwards facing normals of the machine and scatter thousands of tiny little plants across the top as if it were subject to overgrowth, because nothing says barren desert like lush greenery. It's fine, don't overthink it. And like every other 3D nerd on the internet, I'm contractually obligated to reference Simon Stalenhag, and Simon says we should put some giant screens in there with eyeballs watching over us. And go watch his new movie. I hear it's a movie. Foreground time. Gonna hand place a few chunky cliff pieces to form a shelf and some lower bits poking out a bit to get some parallax in the foreground. Place a car in there to set dress and populate the foreground. And with that, our story became a cyberpunk cyborg or android dude strangling a human victim on the edge of a cliff. The victim's been brutally beaten and dragged from the trunk to the ledge like last week's laundry. And a surveillance drone's buzzing around tracking and scanning the situation. Obviously, you know, man versus machine and whatnot. To help solve this murder mystery, some bloody fingerprints on the trunk as a sign of struggle, and bullet holes on the windshield, a baseball bat resting on the car that no one will notice, and some barely visible blood puddles and tracks on the ground from the car to the characters that I'll add by texturing some cards with an opacity map and place directly on the ground. I'll then make a bunch of foreground cables quickly by drawing a few curves on the ground and sweep meshes across them, and scatter some plants and pebbles across the ground. And while I'm here, why not simulate some gravity-defying rock as they slowly crawl to the center of the chasm, as if some sort of massive gravitational pull from the reactor's core. Science. For the cyborg character, I dusted off an old model that I made like 5 years ago and slapped on a new set of clothes. We'll only ever see him from behind, so that's all I have to worry about for now. And the victim is just another outfit with a basic bag geo that is simulated over the base head, then textured it all bloody and beaten up. I animated a drone asset in Maya flying past the camera and tracking the main characters with a spotlight throughout the shot. The character animation was captured with a Rokoko suit that I forced Mel into. I even put on my director's cap and gave her some acting notes, which she did not appreciate. Then in Houdini, I retargeted the mocap onto a base Mixamo rig on my models. For the big sister style eyeballs in the monitors, I animated a close-up eye blinking creepily and tracking the victim's tragic fall down the pit of despair. Then I started with a base close-up image of an eye in Photoshop that I painted over and photo bashed until I had something usable, then projected and cleaned that texture up in Substance Painter. Rendered it, brought the images into After Effects, overlaid the opening TV footage, and kicked out an image sequence to then be plugged into the screen's material as an animated texture. To help sell some depth, I scattered some clouds near the base of the chasm and simulated some moving fog that'll hang off the ledge in the foreground to add to the chaos. And the reactor's gotta, react. So why not a giant energy ball of plasma pulsating at its core, because danger. It'll also silhouette the characters and separate them from the background, which should help the story read. Then, because I hate myself, I simulated ashes in the wind and clothes on the characters individually in vellum for more windy, chaotic goodness. All it took was a few days straight without sleeping and yelling at my computer and questioning my life's choices while trying to get the simulation to work. Totally worth it. And honestly, are you even really truly making 3D art if you don't sacrifice your sleep, sanity, and a good chunk of your soul? Lighting time. I lit the base of the reactor with a giant blue light that'll animate as the energy sphere activates and grows. Added a strong orange light to cast rays from the top screen left because someone once told me that teal and orange was cool and I believed them. A simple outdoor HDRI dome light to get some overall fill. Some spotlights to highlight the action near the main characters and create some rim lighting. And of course the spotlight parented to the drone's animation that'll apply a gobo image filter to so that it's got those laser scanning ray thingies. Then I boosted its diffuse contribution so that it looks like a super bright light on the ground without completely blowing out the volume contribution. The idea being that if you track the drone coming in, then the drone spotlight and the trail of blood coming from the car would lead your eye to the main characters, where you'd then track the victim's fall into the chasm towards the rest of the background. Like 3 really simple story beats. Normally I'd spend the time properly splitting everything into individual passes and add a bunch of AOVs with deep and cryptomats and really get granular with my control, the whole 9 yards. But we've got no time or render power for that right now. I can at least split up a few simple passes so that I'm not stuck having to re-render the entire thing altogether every time I want to tweak something. This will also give me a little bit more control when I'm compositing Nuke later. I put the characters on one layer, the ground and pebbles on another, the background environment on its own, plus some effects passes for the smoke and particle effects, and finally an Atmo pass so that I can dial in the fog separately. With that done, we can finally put Houdini down for like the next month. I need a break, and move on to Nuke, where I layered all the render passes together, add some glows and light wraps, chromatic aberration, and color grade it to look more fictitiously science-like, punched up the smoky sphere with some exponential glow, tracked in some basic J.J. Abrams style lens flares because that's a giant ball of light. I'll add some lens dirt by using an image of some smudges and multiply a blurred version of the shot into that so that it reveals areas of the smudge on the screen as the light kind of comes into contact with that portion of the screen. I animated a bit of camera shake as the drone zips by at the head of the shot, and motion blur was acting kind of funny on the falling victim, so I cheated it by adding some directional blur as the character falls into the chasm. It's fine, no one will know. Added some more lens flares, and then we should be good to write this out as pre-comp. I added a few more glints here to the lights, like that kind of star pattern that you see when you look directly at a light bulb like an idiot. And with that done, since the whole theme of this thing is like machine law and surveillance or whatever, I thought it might be clever to make a quick security camera style overlay and comp that on top of the entire render so that it looks like this was being filmed by some CCTV security camera or drone. And that's it, that's the whole thing. All of that for this like 5-second clip that will have to suffice because I am all out of time and creative willpower. Anyways, come join me on Discord if you want to nerd out about 3D stuff, and I'll be posting some of my assets on cgmall.com in the near future, where you'll be able to find high quality asset kits and other stuff made by awesome 3D professionals, including some of the assets like the clothes I used in this video. So stay tuned for that.